Welcome to the True Paranormal. Today's live video discussion is going to be about the Crying Boy paintings, which I published an article about last Friday on the trueparanormal.blogspot.com. So I will read out that article now, but if you want to read through and look at all the photos, etc. that are involved in the article, then please head to the trueparanormal.blogspot.com to have a look through yourself. The article begins with the Crying Boy paintings have been subject to much speculation, rumour and imagination ever since a media frenzy during the 1980s catapulted them into the public spotlight. Thought to be the cause of supernatural fires across the UK, a wave of what can be interpreted as mass hysteria gripped the UK. The phenomena of these fires became known as a curse, and the media storm resulted in a mass burning of these prints on the Halloween of 1985. Since the 1980s, the story of this painting and the artists behind it have evolved through both the publication of a book and the creation of the internet. Today, multiple interpretations of the curse exist, as do rumours about who the artist was and what led to these paintings allegedly being cursed. So, history. The original Crying Boy painting was painted by a G. Bragolin. Very little seems to be known about this artist, and when researching him the results are quite muddied. His full name is said to be Giovanni Bragolin, but he has also been referred to as Bragolin, Angelo Bragolin, and Franchot Seville. It seems these were all pseudonyms, and the painter's real name was Bruno Amadio. It's been said that he was Italian, but it's also been said that he was a Spanish artist. It seems he was born on the 9th of November 1911 in Venice, which is in Italy, and he died on the 22nd of September 1981 in Padua, which is in Spain. The change in location from Italy to Spain could explain why some sources refer to him as Italian and others refer to him as Spanish. It has been said that this particular artist doesn't appear to have a coherent biography. There are at least 65 paintings made under the Bragolin name, and their reproductions are sold worldwide. He created a group of paintings known as Crying Boys, and apparently he was not always paid royalties for these reproductions of his work. These paintings have also been referred to as Gypsy Boys, although no one seems sure as to why, aside from Bruno Amadio possibly dubbing them under the name Gypsy Cycle. It's also said that Bruno worked in Venice as a painter and restorer. Apparently the Crying Boy paintings were first created during the 1950s, and they were produced by Bruno for tourists to remind them of the orphans of World War II. It is an unconfirmed urban legend that he fled to Spain after the war, presumably World War II, and he painted children from a local orphanage, which then burned down. The only other bit of information I found about Bruno's life, which doesn't relate to the Crying Boy painting, is that he was found to be painting in Padua during the 1970s. There is a particular story relating to him painting children, but that will be discussed later in the article after the context around the curse is discussed. As for the Crying Boy prints in the UK, they were popular in the UK amongst northern working class communities. They were cheap prints which were sold in great number across the region during the 1960s and 1970s. Amongst the Crying Boy paintings there were also Crying Girl paintings, but these didn't seem to gain media attention until after the initial Crying Boy media frenzy died down after 1985. It's been said that the curse of the Crying Boy painting dates back to 1973. It's been said during this year the fireman Alan Wilkinson started to make a log of how many fires he had attended where a Crying Boy painting had survived the fire unharmed. Only one source has pinpointed this originating in this year, but it is generally agreed that Alan did know of similar cases which featured an undamaged Crying Boy painting in homes which had been destroyed by fire. The real start of the curse is often cited as 1985, when Ron and Mary Hall from Rotherham, England, had a house fire which left a Crying Boy painting undamaged. It has been said their house was destroyed and that this painting was the only thing to survive, but this could just be over-exaggeration, as other stories say only their kitchen was unaffected. that say that only their kitchen was affected, rather. It was The Sun which covered the story, and it's been said that at the time they were the most popular tabloid newspaper in the UK. The original story was published on page 13 within their 4th of September edition with the headline Blazing Curse of the Crying Boy. The kitchen fire, which occurred in the Hall's house of 27 years, was a chip pan fire. It's also been said that only the downstairs rooms were damaged, but the consistent detail is that the Crying Boy painting was left undamaged. Ron Hall's brother, Peter, was a fireman based in Rotherham, and Peter's colleague was Alan Wilkinson. The fireman who apparently had been logging these kinds of Crying Boy fires since 1973. The Sun's article featured a photo of the Crying Boy painting, and it featured the caption, "Tears for Fears, the portrait that firemen claim is cursed." No fireman had claimed the painting to be cursed, but the fact the newspaper claimed otherwise gave the curse a level of credibility. It was also The Sun which said the painting was by an Italian artist who signed it as G. Bragolin. The newspaper also added that an estimated 50,000 Crying Boy prints signed G. Bragolin had been sold in British shops, particularly in the working class areas of northern England. Apparently one story even suggested that 250,000 of these prints had been sold. Peter Chippendale and Chris Horry, in their History of the Sun titled Stick It Up Your Punter, which was a book published during 1990, credit the editor Kelvin Mackenzie as the father of the Crying Boy curse. As for why the curse was created, it was to gain readers. During the mid-80s, the Sun was in a battle for their rival, the Daily Mirror, for newspaper readers. Due to this, the Sun published a series of articles focused around bizarre stories which had tenuous origins. An example of this kind of story was one with the headline "Of Freddie Starr Ate My Hamster." This showed that Kelvin Mackenzie wanted exclusive stories which no one else would consider publishing before the Sun did, and so a story about a mass-produced Crying Boy painting which was cursed and so burned down unsuspecting homes was perfect. On the 5th of September 1985, a follow-up article by The Sun claimed horrified readers claiming to be victims of the curse of the Crying Boy had flooded the paper with calls. They all feared they were jinxed by having the print of a tot with tears pouring down his face in their homes. Words such as curse, jinx, feared, and horrified were all used to manipulate readers and create fear, and this definitely worked. Multiple newspaper stories from multiple outlets, not just The Sun, covered the Crying Boy painting over the next few years as it captured the public's imagination. Some of the various newspaper stories with the formats date, month, year are as follows. On the 5th of September 1985, The Sun reported that Dora Mann, who lived in Mitcham, Surrey, and Sandra Cask, which has also been reported as being Crask, who lived in Yorkshire. The Sun reported on their stories. They said this following issue from the original article reported on various calls and letters they had received about Crying Boy fires. Dora claimed that fire occurred 6 months after buying the painting. She said, "All my paintings were destroyed except one of the Crying Boy." Sandra Cask from Yorkshire, whose last name has also been cited as Crask, claimed that her sister-in-law and a friend all had fires since getting copies of the painting. Apparently Sandra had also seen the painting swing from side to side on the wall, but there is a conflicting report here, as apparently it was a London owner who saw this phenomenon occur and not Sandra from Yorkshire. On the 9th of September 1985, The Sun reported on a story about Brian Parks from Boughton, Nottinghamshire. So Brian's wife and 2 children. Some sources have said that it's 3 children and not 2 children, and that he lived in Nottingham, which is different from Boughton, even though both are in Nottinghamshire. So Brian's wife and children needed treatment for smoke inhalation due to a house fire. It's also been said his location was Boughton, but only Boughton exists in Nottinghamshire. Once Brian returned from hospital, he saw the Crying Boy painting hanging undamaged on the wall in the living room. Some sources say say he then destroyed the painting as the house. Some sources say he then destroyed the painting as the fire had left the family homeless. Now, on the 9th of September 1985, The Sun and the Daily Star reported on the story of Grace Murray. So both papers reported that Grace was hospitalised at Stoke Manville with severe burns after a fire, but the Crying Boy painting was untouched by flames. Then on the 21st of October 1985, The Sun reported about the Perillo Pizza Place in Great Yarmouth, and said the pizza place was reported to have been destroyed by a fire, but the painting remained unharmed. The Sun also reported for readers to send their cursed paintings to the newspaper for disposal. Mackenzie wrote, "If you're worried about the Crying Boy picture in your home, send it to us immediately. We will destroy it for you, and that should see the back of any curse." On the 24th of October 1985, the Daily Mail reported on Kevin Godber's family, who lived in Herringthorpe, South Yorkshire. It was reported that Kevin's family were left homeless, and not only did the Crying Boy painting survive, but the pictures either side of it were destroyed in the fire. And then on the 25th of October 1985, The Sun reported on the Amos family, who lived in Heswall, Merseyside, and it said an explosion destroyed the Amos family home, but 2 Crying Boy paintings were left unharmed. Mr. Amos then destroyed the paintings afterwards. On the 26th of October 1985, the Shropshire Star reported on Fred Tower, who lives in Telford. Fred was an ex-fireman and his house burned down in a fire. He kept the Crying Boy painting, which had survived, and said he would keep it in his hallway unless there was a second fire, because he didn't believe in the curse. On the 30th of October 1985, Portsmouth News reported on Stella Brown, who lived in Portsmouth, and said that it was reported Stella burned her 2 Crying Boy prints as she blamed them for bad luck and family health problems. Apparently her son tripped while getting water to put out the fire. On the 31st of October 1985, West Britain reported on Richard Reynolds and his wife, who lived in Falmouth. So Richard and his wife put their 2 Crying Boy paintings on a bonfire made for bonfire night, which is on the 5th of November. They tried giving away their paintings twice, but both were returned to them. Now, on the 31st of October 1985, The Sun then did a follow-up article which reported on thousands of Crying Boy paintings which they had received from people and burned under the supervision of the fire brigade. There are conflicting reports among sources regarding how involved the fire brigade was in this event. Over time, it was this event which, through urban legend, faulty memory, or reporter, became a story about the warehouse which the paintings were stored in at the time, suffering a fire which destroyed the paintings. On the 1st of November 1985, The Guardian reported on Kelvin Mackenzie himself. So The Guardian reported that the editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, believed in the curse he had created and went bananas when someone hung one up in his office as he claimed it was bad luck. The article also noted the accounts of several fire brigades who refused to join in the burning. And on the 12th of November 1985, The Sun reported on Malcolm Vann, who lived in Churchdown, Gloucestershire, and it was reported that Malcolm had destroyed his neighbour's Crying Boy painting and then his own living room caught fire. On the 24th of February 1986, The Sun reported on William Armitage, who lived in Weston-super-Mare in Avon, and it was reported that William Armitage, who was 61 years old, had died in a house fire. His body was reportedly found with a Crying Boy painting which had survived the fire near to it. Another story, but without cited date or paper, is about a painting owner who claimed her 11-year-old son caught his private parts on a hook after she bought the Crying Boy print. Mrs. Rose from Farrington, Preston, wrote to The Sun in a letter which was published by The Sun, and it said, "Since I bought it in 1959, my 3 sons and my husband have all died. I have often wondered if it had a curse." Apparently another reader also tried to destroy 2 prints by fire, but found they wouldn't burn. This could be the same as the 9th report listed above, but with different sources providing different details on the story. The claim that the Crying Boy prints wouldn't burn was tested by a security guard called Paul Collier. Apparently he placed one of 2 prints he owned onto a bonfire and found they would not be touched by flames, despite him leaving them there for at least an hour. Some sources have said he left them for hours, and others say only an hour. It's been quoted, he has been quoted as saying, "It was frightening, the fire wouldn't even touch it," along with, "I believe it's jinxed, we feel doubly at risk with 2 of these in the house, and we are determined to get rid of them." Again, Paul's account could instead be the one where it was said a reader tried to destroy 2 prints by fire, but with no luck. As described above, hundreds of people contacted the Sun about their own issues and experiences with their own copies of the Crying Boy painting, these often including fires and family bereavements, which were all attributed to the painting. In reality, fire service investigations found that most cases were due to carelessly disregarded cigarettes, overheated chip pans, and faulty electric heaters. Alan Wilkinson, who had personally logged 50 Crying Boy fires dating back to 1973, dismissed there being any connection to the supernatural. He had 33 years' worth of firefighting experience and wasn't superstitious, but despite saying that the fires were caused by human carelessness, he couldn't personally explain how the paintings had survived. Alan's wife said, "I always say it's the tears that put the fire out, and as the Sun wasn't interested in finding the rational explanation, they ignored what Alan had to say and wrote, 'Fire chiefs have admitted they have no logical explanation for a number of recent incidents.' Following this, it soon emerged that not all prints which people were attributing the curse to were of the same painting or even by the same artist. Other Crying Boy images involved in fires included some which were part of a series of studies called Childhood. These images were painted by the Scottish artist Anna Zinkson. I'm not sure I pronounce the name. Might be Zinkison. Who died during 1976. Regardless, they're all still cheap prints which had been mass-produced. Continuing to ignore the rational explanations for the fires, journalists wanted to embrace a paranormal reason as it made for a better headline. They went off in search of a witch or somebody into the occult who might make a better headline. Roy Vickery, the secretary of the Folklore Society, was quoted saying all these fires could be Child's curse, his way of getting revenge. This quote implied that the artist could have mistreated the child model, and so this is seemingly where the rumours of the curse and the print potentially being haunted either by this child or the bad intent from the artist have grown from. The widespread anxiety caused by the Sun's headlines led to the South Yorkshire Fire Service issuing a statement. The Chief Divisional Officer, Mick Riley, said, "Any connection with the fires is purely coincidental. Fires are not started by pictures or coincidence, but by careless acts and omissions." He also said, "The reason why this picture has not always been destroyed in the fire is because it is printed on high-density hardboard, which is very difficult to ignite." Potentially inspired by seeing how much of a frenzy they had created, the Sun requested for readers to send in their prints, and the newspaper company would hold a mass burning to rid the UK of the curse. Mackenzie's original plan was to burn the paintings on the roof of the Sun's Bovary Street offices, but this was vetoed by the London and Thames Valley Fire Brigades. Apparently both brigades refused to cooperate and called the Sun's campaign a cheap publicity stunt. The reporter Paul Hooper, along with the photographer and page 3 girls, ended up taking the paintings to a pile located near Reading to be burned. The Sun reported the story of their burning on Halloween with the headline, "Sun Nails Curse of the Weeping Boy for Good." It was the page 3 girl Sandra Jane Moore who started the burning, and it said over 2,500 copies of the painting were burned. It was believed that this burning exorcised the curse, and the tabloid stories began to decrease. Along with it being reported that Mackenzie may have ended up believing in his own curse, apparently Alan Wilkinson and the chief officer Mick Riley had both refused to take the Crying Boy print as a gift. When Mick refused to take it, he said the reason was that his wife wouldn't like it. Alan apparently admitted that he had hung one up as a joke in the station, but he was told by his superiors to take it down. He is quoted as having said the same day an oven in the upstairs kitchen overheated and the firemen's dinners were burned. As time passed from the newspaper report to the 1980s, the stories turned into various myths and legends. One such myth says that being kind to the prince awards good luck, and another says that you can prevent bad luck and bring good luck by placing a crying girl print beside a crying boy print. With the creation of the internet, the Crying Boy story gained a new life beyond the initial rumours and newspaper stories. One web source claims that during the 90s, the Crying Boy fires were reported for the first time in other parts of the world. The story also gained the attention of paranormal investigators, as the source said. A medium claims the spirit of the boy is trapped in the painting, and it starts fires in an attempt to burn the painting and free itself. Others claim the painting is haunted or attracts poltergeist activity. Stories of the artist's and subject's misfortune had attached themselves to the painting. A story that the boy in the image had been mistreated by the artist also gained popularity, and people completely ignored the fact that there were multiple paintings and multiple artists involved. They also ignored the fact that the story began as a throwaway remark which had been made to the Sun. In the year 2000, Tom Slemen revived the Crying Boy story yet again in a book which was part of a series called Haunted Liverpool. Tom's work was presented as non-fiction, but it was largely unreferenced. This could very well be the most commonly cited myth around the Crying Boy painting's origins. What could very well be the most commonly cited myth around the Crying Boy painting's origins comes from Tom Slemen's book. Apparently, a retired schoolmaster from Devon called George Mallory had tracked down the original artist and spoke with him about the painting during 1995. Mallory is also said to have been a well-respected researcher into the occult, and it's been said the painter was an old Spanish portrait artist named Franchot Seville who lived in Madrid. Tom Slemen said the artist told Mallory that he found the subject of the painting, who was an orphan in Madrid during 1969. He also said the orphan never spoke and looked sorrowful. A Catholic priest then identified him to the artist as Don Benillo, a child who had run away after seeing his parents die in a fire. The priest then told the artist to have nothing to do with the boy because fires happened wherever he went, and due to this, the villagers called the boy Diablo. It's also been said the boy was nicknamed the Devil Child. It's said the painter ignored the priest and took Donna in, then later painting the boy's portrait. A bit of time later, the artist's house burned down, and remembering the priest's words, the artist accused the boy of arson and put him back on the streets. During 1976, a car was then found which had crashed into a wall on the outskirts of Barcelona. It's said this car had set on fire and the body was unidentifiable due to this, and it was only when an ID was found in the glove compartment that the body was identified as being a 19-year-old Don Benillo, the orphan which was the subject of the Crying Boy painting. Apparently, the researcher George Mallory is just as untraceable as Franchot Seville or Giovanni Bragolin. The story regarding Mallory and Benillo lacks any factual basis, especially as it said the original painter died during 1981, yet Mallory apparently spoke with him and found all of this story out during 1995. It's also said that during the 80s, the original artist went on a TV show and said the paintings were of dead children or at least represented them. This apparently led people to thinking the paintings were cursed or haunted. Also, the artist apparently admitted he had made a pact with Satan to sell his work and become wealthy. Another thing said is that the child was a gypsy and their family placed a curse on the artist. Few sources have cited these details though, so this information seems incredibly tenuous. During 2002, the Star reported that the curse was back and that it had destroyed the home of Stan Jones in Rotherham, the town the first fire which inspired the Sun's original story had begun. It was reported that Stan had bought a £2 copy of the Crying Boy print 10 years before the fire, and ever since had experienced a series of house fires, each of which featured the Crying Boy hanging on the wall. On the 8th of October 2010, a video was uploaded to BBC's YouTube channel. This video showed the British comedian Steve Punt investigating the claim that the Crying Boy painting could not be burned. This was part of a BBC Radio 4 production called Punt PI. Steve burned the painting with the construction researcher Martin Shipp, and they found the painting did set on fire, but only the corner was scorched and the painting was left largely intact with the Crying Boy's face untouched. Punt's conclusion was that the painting had been treated with a fire retardant vanish and that the paintings had landed face down in house fires because the string holding them would burn first, causing the paintings to drop print side first in most cases. It's also been suggested that by landing face down, the painting was further protected from the fire around it. Despite the original legend originating during 1985, the Crying Boy story is still finding ways of being relevant today. The Crying Boy legend has been discussed during 2012 within Season 3, Episode 4 of Weird or What with William Shatner. Also, on the 2nd of February 2022, the Hanbury Arms Haunted Hotel and Museum posted that they currently have several Crying Boy portraits on display. Dr. David Clark from Sheffield Hallam University has also written an article about the Crying Boy prints. As for my thoughts, this article is quite different from others regarding the paranormal, as the link the Crying Boy has to any possible afterlife is tenuous. Rather than the painting being haunted by the spirit of a boy or the artist, instead the bulk of the story is about it being cursed, a topic I am hesitant to discuss, as I want to write articles predominantly focused on the possibility of an afterlife. However, I think this has been an incredibly important article and has highlighted an incredibly important point about the influence of both the media and the internet when it comes to paranormal matters. People can be incredibly quick to trust what they read, especially when in a published and printed format, and the Crying Boy legend shows that with both the newspaper articles and Tom Slemmon's book. I think the information discussed in the article quite clearly portrays the legend as being nothing more than an eye-catching headline and effort to gain readers by the Sun. People have always had a fascination with the paranormal, and I think the Sun were clever to create this mythology around an incredibly common print which was in many households around the UK. It made the articles relatable, and with each new report, people only became more convinced by the coincidence. It reminds me of the legend surrounding Robert the Doll and the fact people buy into the story, possibly due to all the apology letters to the doll which are displayed in the doll's case. It also reminds me greatly of the Carlos hoax, which James Randi created in order to show how willing newspapers were to promote paranormal claims without properly doing their research. As for Tom Slemmon's book, it really seems like he took great liberties when telling the story around the artist. The story doesn't line up too well with the dates around when the artist died, and very few names discussed can be traced online. This makes Tom's book seem, at best, mostly fictional. It would have been interesting if a story like this happened today, and to hear the artist's thoughts on whatever the curse may be. However, I don't think something like the Crying Boy curse would be easy to create today. Word of mouth was likely a powerful factor during the 80s, and I would hope word of any modern-day generated curse would be quelled by the relevant services, potentially the fire department, issuing a statement which would be widespread through the internet. And yeah, so that is the article. As I said that, just to clarify on that final point, because I don't know whether or not I wrote it in a way which said it particularly great, I feel it would be interesting if someone tried to do something akin to the Carlos hoax or the Crying Boy painting curse and tried to get people en masse to believe that. I think in a way it could be quite easy, but at the same time I think back then it sounds like it took a bit of time for the fire department to put out an official statement that was reported on in the news, or on the radio or on TV at the time. And, you know, technology back then wasn't what it was today, was kind of the point I was trying to make about the word of mouth thing. So if a statement was done back then, it would probably take people time to hear it, and they may not know whether or not to particularly trust it, maybe. Whereas now, all you have to do, just like go on YouTube and straight away you'll come up with a video, HD colour, showing the person that, like, the head of the fire department or whatever, giving a statement on the matter and explaining in depth exactly what it is that people are experiencing. And you'd be able to show people footage, like, and photos and whatnot, being like, look, here's the photo of the investigation, there's the bit of cigarette or whatever. Whereas back then that couldn't happen. It was just, oh, this guy said this thing, okay, I don't know whether or not to believe that, because of all this hysteria that's happening around the newspapers, especially when you're looking at all the headlines. And I don't know how reputable the Sun was back then. I know it's not now. This could very well be one of the reasons why it's not now. But yeah, so that's the point I was trying to make. It would be interesting to see if someone could try and do something to that scale today. Um, I suppose the hoax, the Carlos hoax is. I don't know what year that was done. I feel like that was the 70s, or the 80s. But that was one where James Randi contacted newspapers about this fake psychic he'd created, and he was then getting booked into all sorts of places and all these articles written about him because no one did their research. Um, so that was the point I was trying to make there. So I hope that you enjoyed my little ramble at the end and also the readout of the article. I know I was a little bit kind of stuttery throughout that. I'm just tired today, so that's what that is. So thank you very much. And like I say, if you do want to read the full article, it is available on the trueparanormal.blogspot.com. There are a number of photos there of kind of the newspaper headlines and the actual paintings themselves. So if you want to actually see those things for yourself, then you can do that. And I will be live next Wednesday discussing something a bit different again. Because as mentioned in the article, I like to try and just write about the possibilities of an afterlife and connections to that. Every now and then, though, you'll encounter a topic which is a little bit skewed from that. So I was on a podcast recently and they asked whether or not I'd ever write about cryptids, and I was like, probably not. I'm not going to write about Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster because they have no connection to the afterlife as far as I'm concerned. But there might be things which, when it comes to curses and witches, they tend to dabble in that stuff. So that, as far as I'm aware, is part of the puzzle. So next Wednesday, I will be reading out an article which will discuss another curse-related thing and kind of witch-related thing. So I hope that you all enjoy that. The article for that will be published this Friday. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching, and thank you to anyone who's watching now who has been watching the content over on TikTok. I know that the TikTok streams, they have just become chatting streams, so if you want to ask me any questions, if you want to properly chat about anything at all, then head over to TikTok, and I upload videos there, which are what you'll see on Facebook, but like I say, the Wednesday live streams there are just me chatting. So I hope that you all have a great week, and I will live stream again next Wednesday. Cool. So goodbye.